Hi, movie review lovers friends. Today, I am going to describe the movie story of The Bank Job 2025. Now let's talk about it. As we know that The Bank Job 2025, in this high-stakes thriller, Jason Statham returns to his bank heist 2025 roots, this time with the enigmatic Angelina Jolie in an unforgettable criminal partnership. Statham plays Terry Leather, a veteran safecracker who returns to the world of crime to complete one last impossible mission, infiltrating a top-secret vault rumored to contain not only millions of dollars, but the dirty secrets of the world's most powerful people. Jolie shines as Cassandra, a smart and ruthless broker with her own motives for robbing the bank, and possibly Terry too. The trailer offers tense break-ins, clever misdirection, lavish scenes with a menacing edge, and impassioned dialogue between the two leads. "We don't just take the money," Terry growls. "We take everything." Cassandra sneers. "That's why I called you." The producers allege that the story was prevented from being told in 1971 because of a D-notice, to protect a prominent member of the British royal family. 5, according to the producers. This film is intended to reveal the truth for the first time. 6, although it apparently includes significant elements of fiction. The premiere was held in London on February 18, 2008, and it was released in the UK on February 29, 2008, and in the US on March 7, 2008. It received mostly positive reviews from critics and grossed $66 million worldwide. Plot. In 1971, British Security Services (MI5) have taken interest in a safety deposit box in a particular Lloyd's Bank branch. Belonging to black militant gangster Michael X, it contains compromising photos of Princess Margaret. 7, insurance to keep the British authorities off Michael's back. Martine Love, an ex-model romantically involved with MI5 agent Tim Everett, is caught smuggling drugs into the country, and to avoid going to jail, she makes a deal with the authorities to retrieve the photos. Martine approaches her friend Terry, a struggling car salesman with criminal contacts, and tells him that if he can assemble the gang to help her rob the bank, he will be richly rewarded, but does not tell him about the photos in the deposit box. Terry's team includes his close friends Eddie, one of his employees, Dave, and Kevin, as well as trusted criminal associates Bam Boss and Geisinger. While scouting the bank, Dave runs into gangster Lou Vogel, for whom he made pornographic films. The gang rents a leather goods shop near the bank, tunnels below the vault, then uses a thermal lance to break through the floor into the vault. They loot the safety deposit boxes, but Terry notices Martine's interest in box 118 and discovers the photos. The police are alerted to the robbery by a ham radio operator who overhears the gang's walkie-talkie communications, but by the time they locate the bank, the gang has already fled. The robbery rattles important figures who used the bank, including Lou Vogel, who kept a ledger of police payoffs inside. He notifies Michael X in Trinidad, who deduces Gail Benson, the lover of his associate Hakeem Jamal, is spying for MI5 and murders her. Vogel decides Dave's presence outside that bank was not a coincidence, and has him kidnapped and tortured for information. Dave gives in, and Lou has Gerald Pike and Nick Burton, two policemen working on his payroll, kidnap Eddie at Terry's garage. Meanwhile, Terry discovers explicit photographs of government officials among their loot and uses them to secure passports and new identities for the gang. Vogel's men track down and murder Bam Boss and Geisinger. Eddie refuses to cooperate with Vogel, who has Gerald execute Dave and threatens to kill Eddie unless Terry surrenders the ledger. Terry agrees to meet up with Vogel at Paddington Station to exchange the ledger and Eddie. He arranges for the meeting to happen at the same time as he will be picking up the new passports and immunity from prosecution from MI5 and Lord Mountbatten in exchange for the pictures of Princess Margaret. Meanwhile, Terry sends Kevin to honest cop Roy Given with a page torn from the ledger. Spooked, Vogel tries to flee, but Terry attacks and beats him, only for he and Eddie to be arrested by the police. After speaking to Everett, Given has Terry, Eddie and Kevin released and uses the information they supplied to arrest Lou, Gerald, and Nick. Michael X is arrested as well, and after Benson's body is found, his house is burned down. The surviving gang gets together one last time to mourn Dave. Eddie inherits Terry's car dealership, while Kevin and Martine prepare to begin separate new lives with their respective shares of the money. Terry and his family leave England. Vogel's ledger causes Scotland Yard to undergo a major corruption purge in the police force. The activities of Sonia Burns brothels make several senior officials resign. Michael X is hanged in 1975 for the murder of Gail Benson, and his file in the British National Archive remains classified until 2054. Lou Vogel is sentenced to 8 years in prison. Hakeem Jamal is murdered in 1973. The murders of both Bambas and Geisinger are never solved. The loot taken from the robbery consists of £4 million. The film is in part based on historical facts about the Baker Street robbery. A gang tunneled into a branch of Lloyd's Bank at the junction of Baker Street and Marylebone Road in London on the night of September 11, 1971, and robbed the safety deposit boxes that were stored in the vault. The robbers had rented a leather goods shop named Le Sac 2 doors down from the bank, and tunneled approximately 40 feet, 12 meters, passing under the chicken and restaurant that was located between the shop and the bank. 5. The tunnelling took 3 weeks, working on weekends. 5. Ham radio operator Robert Rowlands overheard conversations between the robbers and their rooftop lookout. He contacted police and tape-recorded the conversations, which were subsequently made public. The film includes lines recorded by Rowlands, such as the lookout's comment that money may be your god, but it's not mine, and I'm fucking off. 8. The film's producers said that they have a source, identified in press reports as George McIndoe, who was an executive producer. 9. McIndoe claimed that he had talked with 2 of the gang, who even visited the film set. 10. The film's plot includes a fictional issue of a D-Notice by MI5, requesting no further press reports on grounds of national security because of a safe deposit box holding sexually compromising pictures of Princess Margaret. 9. The possible connection to Michael X is based on material from McIndoe, who said he had spoken to 2 men who claimed they were involved robbers. 11. The Daily Mirror interviewed a convicted robber who claims to be a perpetrator, and he indicated that embarrassing photos were found but deliberately left behind for the police, including child pornography. 5. The filmmakers acknowledged that they made up the character Martine. David Denby wrote in The New Yorker that it is impossible to say how much of the film's story is true. 12. The fictional character of Lou Vogel may allude to pornographer and racketeer Bernie Silver. 10. A major figure in Soho in the 1960s and early 1970s who was imprisoned in 1975 for the 1956 murder of Tommy Scarface Smithson, and also to later events surrounding his associate pornographer James Humphreys. The Sunday People published photographs in 1972 of Commander Kenneth Drury, the head of the Metropolitan Police Flying Squad, spending a luxurious 2-week holiday with Humphreys in Cyprus. And a police raid on Humphrey's house uncovered a diary cataloging itemized payments to 17 police officers. Humphreys was imprisoned for 8 years in 1974 for wounding his wife's former lover. He then turned Queen's evidence, testifying against some of Scotland Yard's most senior officers in 2 major corruption trials in 1977, for which he received a royal pardon and was released from prison. 13. In 1994. Humphreys was imprisoned for 12 months for living off the earnings of prostitutes. 14. 15. The introduction of Michael X's character showing him leading a landlord locked in a slave collar is based on a historical incident. 16. A passing glance at a photo of John Lennon found in Michael X's safety deposit box is inspired by Lennon's support for Michael X's Black House headquarters depicted in the film, and Lennon posting his bail. 17. Tie-in. Screenshot illustrating how a special outdoor set was constructed for production of the film. Part of the filming took place on location at the offices of Webster's, 136, Baker Street, where the rooftops were used for lookout locations. The exterior scenes of the bank and adjacent shops were done at Pinewood Studios on a specially constructed set of Baker Street to retain an authentic feel of the period and to allow for greater control. This partial set was extended using visual effects. 18. The production also shot on location inside the Aldwych Underground Station and at Paddington Station. The crew used Chatham Historic Dockyard to shoot the sequence at the side entrance of Paddington, where the final showdown between Terry and Lou Vogel takes place. 19. The review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes reports that 79% of 144 critics gave the film a positive review, with an average rating of June 8, 10. The website's critics' consensus reads, "Well cast and crisply directed, The Bank Job is a thoroughly entertaining British heist thriller." 20. Metacritic reports the film has a weighted average score of 69 out of 100 based on 32 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. 21. Audiences polled by CinemaScore graded the film an average B+ on an A+ to F scale. The Bank Job grossed $30.1 million in the United States and Canada, as well as $36.1 million in other territories, including $8.1 million in the UK, for a worldwide total of $66.10 million. 2. The film opened at number 4 in North America and grossed $5.9 million in 1,603 cinemas in its opening weekend. The British royal family comprises King Charles III and other members of his family. There is no strict legal or formal definition of who is or is not a member, although the royal household has issued different lists outlining who is considered part of the royal family. Members typically support the monarch in carrying out public engagements and take part in charitable work and ceremonial duties. Senior royals collectively undertake thousands of official engagements across the United Kingdom, British Overseas Territories, Crown dependencies, and abroad each year, including state visits, national events, and patronage activities. The family also represents the UK on the global stage and contributes to soft power through diplomacy and cultural presence. Initiatives associated with the family include charitable foundations such as the King's Trust and the Royal Foundation, which focus on youth development, mental health, conservation, and early childhood. The monarchy operates within a constitutional framework, with succession determined by statute and convention. Members. Further information: List of members of the House of Windsor and family tree of the British royal family. The Lord Chamberlain's list of the royal family, published in November 2025, mentions all of King George VI's living descendants and their spouses, along with Queen Elizabeth II cousins with royal rank and their spouses. 1. The list applies for the purposes of regulating the use of royal symbols and images of the family. 2. The royal website once stated that, generally speaking, the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of a sovereign, as well as their spouses, are members of the royal family. First cousins of the monarch may also be included. Children are included on coming of age or after they have completed their education. 3. The website of the royal family also provides a list of members of the royal family comprising King Charles III and Queen Camilla, William, Prince of Wales and Catherine, Princess of Wales, Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex and Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, and Princess Royal, Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, Prince Richard, Duke of Gloucester and Birgit, Duchess of Gloucester, Prince Edward, Duke of Kent, and Princess Alexandra. During the early modern period, the Lord Chamberlain was one of the 3 principal officers of the royal household, the others being the Lord Steward and the Master of the Horse. The Lord Chamberlain was responsible for the chamber or the household above stairs, that is, the series of rooms used by the sovereign to receive increasingly select visitors, terminating in the royal bedchamber. Although the bedchamber itself came to operate semi-autonomously under the groom of the stool/stole. His department not only furnished the servants and other personnel, such as physicians and bodyguards, the yeomen of the guard and gentlemen pensioners, in intimate attendance on the sovereign, but also arranged and staffed ceremonies and entertainments for the court. He also had secular authority over the Chapel Royal. Under the terms of the Civil List and Secret Service Money Act 1782, 22 Geo 3, c. 82, the Lord Chamberlain took on direct responsibility for items kept and maintained by the Great Wardrobe and the Jewel House, whereby these formerly semi-independent subdepartments were abolished. 3. As other responsibilities of government were devolved to ministers, the ordering of the royal household was largely left to the personal taste of the sovereign. To ensure that the chamber reflected the royal tastes, the Lord Chamberlain received commands directly from the sovereign to be transmitted to the heads of subordinate departments. 3. In 1594, the Lord Chamberlain, Henry Carey, 1st Baron Hunsdon, founded the Lord Chamberlain's Men, for which William Shakespeare was a part, and later a shareholder in the company, and for whom he wrote most of his plays during his career. Carey served under Elizabeth I at the time, and was in charge of all court entertainment, a duty traditionally given to the Master of the Revels, a deputy of the Lord Chamberlain. Later, in 1603, James I elevated the Chamberlain's Men to royal patronage and changed the name to the King's Men. By the 1830s, it started to become clear that the theatre licensing system in England needed an upgrade. Playwrights, instead of representatives of minor theatres, actually initiated the final push for reform as they felt that their livelihoods were being negatively affected by the monopoly the larger theatres had on the industry. Backed by the laws in the Licensing Act 1737, 5. A select committee was formed in 1832 with the purpose of examining the laws that affected dramatic literature. Their main complaints were the lack of copyright protection for their work and, more importantly, that only 2 patent theatres in London could legitimately perform new plays. After more pressure from playwrights and theatre managers, the findings of the committee were finally presented to Parliament. 5. It was the proposals of this committee that Parliament implemented in the Theatres Act 1843. The Act still confirmed the absolute powers of censorship enjoyed by the Lord Chamberlain, but still slightly restricted his powers, so that he could only prohibit the performance of plays where he was of the opinion that it is fitting for the preservation of good manners, decorum, or of the public peace so to do. The Act, however, did abolish the monopoly that the patent houses had in London, providing a minor win for playwrights and theatre managers wishing to produce new work. 5.1. Theatres Act 1968. In 1909, a Joint Select Committee on Stage Plays Censorship was established and recommended that the Lord Chamberlain should continue to act as censor, but that it could be lawful to perform plays without a license from the Lord Chamberlain. 1. However, King Edward VII refused to accept these recommendations. The outbreak of both world wars put an end to any parliamentary initiatives to change the laws regarding theatre censorship for many years. In 1948, the First British Theatre Conference recommended the termination of theatre censorship with the plan to pursue parliamentary action to ratify this. 1.5. In the 1960s, the debate to abolish theatre censorship rose again as a new generation of young playwrights came on the scene. They gained popularity with their new plays in local establishments, but since many were refused a license by the Lord Chamberlain, they could not transfer to the West End. In the case of John Osborne's play A Patriot for Me, the Lord Chamberlain at the time, Cameron Cobbold, 1st Baron Cobbold, was irritated that the play was so widely publicized even though he had banned it, and therefore pursued legal action. In the end, the play was allowed to continue as it was. At this point, several widely regarded authors had all been censored by the Lord Chamberlain at one time or another, including playwrights Henrik Ibsen and George Bernard Shaw. Sometimes censorship was self-serving. A comedy written for the Edinburgh Festival Fringe in the early 1960s had, as its plot, a jocular scheme to steal the crown jewels. The Lord Chamberlain issued a one-line letter requiring the excision of that plot element. As Michael Palin, one of its authors and performers, notes, that meant banning the entire production. 6. Another Joint Select Committee was founded to further debate on the issue and present a solution. This time the argument largely centered on this issue on the portrayal of living and recently dead individuals, particularly in reference to the monarchy as well as politicians. 1.5. After much debate, the Theatres Act 1968 was finally passed. It officially abolished the censorship of the stage and repealed the Lord Chamberlain's power to refuse a license to a play of any kind. 1. The first London performance of the musical Hair was actually delayed until the act was passed after a license had been refused. 7. Aftermath. The battle regarding the abolition of censorship was largely a political one, fought on principle. Those who opposed the termination of this particular duty of the Lord Chamberlain were mostly concerned about how to protect the reputation of the royal family and the government instead of controlling obscenity and blasphemy on stage. However, this concern has largely been unfounded. Since the termination of censorship, British drama has flourished and produced several prominent playwrights and new works since. The abolition of censorship opened a floodgate of theatrical creativity. 5. The Lord Chamberlain's Plays. Main article: The Lord Chamberlain's Plays. The long-standing role of the Lord Chamberlain as theatrical censor resulted in an extensive archive of both licensed and unlicensed play scripts being preserved. 8. The collection held at the British Library also includes correspondence and administrative documents related to the censorship process. 9. Duties of the office. The Henry Grey, 12th Earl of Kent in 1705, carrying the wand of office and wearing the insignia of a gold key, as Lord Chamberlain. The Lord Chamberlain is the most senior official of the royal household and oversees its business, including liaising with the other senior officers of the household, chairing heads of department meetings, and advising in the appointment of senior household officials. 2.10. The Lord Chamberlain also undertakes ceremonial duties and serves as the channel of communication between the sovereign and the House of Lords. 2. Under David Ogilvy, 13th Earl of Airlie, the Lord Chamberlain's ceremonial and non-executive role was altered to that of chief executive. 11. Airlie initiated changes in the early 1990s under the auspices of the Way Ahead Group. 12. Under these plans, Queen Elizabeth II agreed to pay tax, greater transparency for the public subsidy of the monarchy began, and a greater emphasis on public relations started. 13. In 1986, he produced a 1,393-page report recommending 188 changes for smoother operations of the royal household. 14. The Lord Chamberlain's office is a department of the royal household and its day-to-day work is headed by the Comptroller. It is responsible for organizing ceremonial activities including state visits, investitures, garden parties, the state opening of Parliament, weddings and funerals. 2. On state and ceremonial occasions, the Lord Chamberlain carries specific symbols that represent his office, a white staff and a key, which is worn at the hip pocket. These insignia are returned to the monarch when the Lord Chamberlain retires from office. With a frown. 15. But if the monarch dies, the white staff is symbolically broken by the Lord Chamberlain and placed on the coffin of the deceased sovereign at the end of the state funeral service. This was last done by Andrew Parker, Baron Parker of Mincemere, who broke his staff over the coffin of Elizabeth II in 2022. 2.10. The Lord Chamberlain is ex officio the Chancellor of the Royal Victorian Order, having possession of a badge corresponding to that office. 16. As such, they are often appointed to the said order either upon appointment as Lord Chamberlain, or later in their career. The Lord Chamberlain also regulates the design and the wearing of court uniform and dress, and how insignia are worn. George VI, Albert Frederick Arthur George, December 14, 1895 to February 6, 1952, was King of the United Kingdom and the Dominions of the British Commonwealth from December 11, 1936 until his death in 1952. He was also the last Emperor of India from 1936 until the British Raj was dissolved in August 1947, and the first head of the Commonwealth following the London Declaration of 1949. The future George VI was born during the reign of his great-grandmother Queen Victoria. He was named Albert at birth, after his late great-grandfather Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, and was known as Bertie to his family and close friends. His father ascended the throne as George V in 1910. As the second son of the king, Albert was not expected to inherit the throne. He spent his early life in the shadow of his elder brother, Edward, the heir apparent. Albert attended Naval College as a teenager and served in the Royal Navy and Royal Air Force during the First World War. In 1920, he was made Duke of York. He married Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon in 1923, and they had two daughters, Elizabeth and Margaret. In the mid-1920s, He engaged speech therapist Lionel Logue to treat his stutter, which he learned to manage to some degree. His elder brother ascended the throne as Edward VIII after their father died in 1936, but Edward abdicated later that year to marry the twice-divorced American socialite Wallis Simpson. As heir presumptive to Edward VIII, Albert became king, taking the regnal name George VI. In September 1939, the British Empire and most Commonwealth countries, but not Ireland, declared war on Nazi Germany, following the invasion of Poland. War with the Kingdom of Italy and the Empire of Japan followed in 1940 and 1941, respectively. George VI was seen as sharing the hardships of the common people, and his popularity soared. Buckingham Palace was bombed during the Blitz while the King and Queen were there, and his younger brother the Duke of Kent was killed on active service. George became known as a symbol of British determination to win the war. Britain and its allies were victorious in 1945, but the British Empire declined. Ireland had largely broken away, followed by the independence of India and Pakistan in 1947. George relinquished the title of Emperor of India in June 1948 and instead adopted the new title of Head of the Commonwealth. He was beset by smoking-related health problems in the later years of his reign and died at Sandringham House, aged 56, of a coronary thrombosis. He was succeeded by his elder daughter, Elizabeth II. Early life. The four who would be kings in the 20th century: Edward VII, far right; his son George, Prince of Wales, later George V, far left, and grandsons Edward, later Edward VIII, rear, and Albert, later George VI, foreground, c. 1908. Albert was born at 3:05 a.m. on December 14, 1895 at York Cottage, 3, on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, during the reign of his great-grandmother Queen Victoria. 4. His father was Prince George, Duke of York, later King George V, the second and only surviving son of the Prince and Princess of Wales, later King Edward VII and Queen Alexandra. His mother, the Duchess of York, later Queen Mary, was the eldest child and only daughter of Francis, Duke of Teck, and Princess Mary Adelaide, Duchess of Teck. 5. His birth date coincided with the 34th anniversary of the death of his great-grandfather Albert, Prince Consort. 6. Uncertain of how the Prince Consort's widow, Queen Victoria, would take the news of the birth, the Prince of Wales wrote to the Duke of York that the Queen had been rather distressed. 2 days later, he wrote again, "I really think it would gratify her if he yourself proposed the name Albert to her." 7. The Queen was mollified by the proposal to name the new baby Albert, and wrote to the Duchess of York, "I am all impatience to see the new one, born on such a sad day but rather more dear to me, especially as he will be called by that dear name which is a byword for all that is great and good." 8. Consequently, he was baptized Albert Frederick Arthur George at St. Mary Magdalene Church, Sandringham on 17 February 1896. Formally, he was His Highness Prince Albert of York. Within the royal family, he was known informally as Bertie. 10. The Duchess of Teck did not like the first name her grandson had been given, and she wrote prophetically that she hoped the last name may supplant the less favored one. 11. Albert was fourth in line to the throne at birth, after his grandfather, father and elder brother, Edward. Albert was ill often and was described as easily frightened and somewhat prone to tears. 12. His parents were generally removed from their children's day-to-day upbringing, as was the norm in aristocratic families of that era. He had a stutter that lasted for many years. Although naturally left-handed, he was forced to write with his right hand, as was common practice at the time. 13. He had chronic stomach problems as well as knock knees, for which he was forced to wear painful corrective splints. 14. Queen Victoria died on January 22, 1901, and the Prince of Wales succeeded her as King Edward VII. Prince Albert moved up to third in line to the throne, after his father and elder brother. Military career and education. At a Royal Air Force dinner, 1919. Beginning in 1909, Albert attended the Royal Naval College, Osborne, as a naval cadet. In 1911, he came bottom of the class in the final examination, but despite this he progressed to the Royal Naval College, Dartmouth. 15. When his grandfather Edward VII died in 1910, his father became King George V. Prince Edward became Prince of Wales, with Albert II in line to the throne. 16. Albert spent the first 6 months of 1913 on the training ship HMS Cumberland in the West Indies and on the east coast of Canada. 17. He was rated as a midshipman aboard HMS Collingwood on September 15, 1913. He spent 3 months in the Mediterranean, but never overcame his seasickness. 18. 3 weeks after the outbreak of World War I, he was medically evacuated from the ship to Aberdeen, where his appendix was removed by John Marnock. 19. He was mentioned in dispatches for his actions as a turret officer aboard Collingwood in the Battle of Jutland, May 31, June 1, 1916, the great naval battle of the war. He did not see further combat, largely because of ill health caused by a duodenal ulcer, for which he had an operation in November 1917. 20. In February 1918, Albert was appointed officer in charge of boys at the Royal Naval Air Services training establishment at Cranwell. With the establishment of the Royal Air Force, Albert transferred from the Royal Navy to the Royal Air Force. 21. He served as officer commanding No. 4 Squadron of the Boys Wing at Cranwell until August 1918. 22. Before reporting for duty on the staff of the RAF's Cadet Brigade at St. Leonards-on-Sea and then at Shorncliffe. 23. He completed a fortnight's training and took command of a squadron on the cadet wing. 24. He was the first member of the British royal family to be certified as a fully qualified pilot. 25. Albert wanted to serve on the continent while the war was still in progress and welcomed a posting to General Trenchard's staff in France. On October 23, he flew across the Channel to Ottodmey. 26. For the closing weeks of the war, he served on the staff of the RAF's Independent Air Force at its headquarters in Nancy, France. 27. Following the disbanding of the Independent Air Force in November 1918, he remained on the continent for 2 months as an RAF staff officer until posted back to Britain. 28. He accompanied King Albert I of Belgium on his triumphal re-entry into Brussels on November 22. The prince qualified as an RAF pilot on July 31, 1919, and was promoted to squadron leader the following day. Albert assumed the regnal name, George VI, to emphasize continuity with his father and restore confidence in the monarchy. 58. The beginning of George VI's reign was taken up by questions surrounding his predecessor and brother, whose titles, style, and position were uncertain. He had been introduced as His Royal Highness Prince Edward for the abdication broadcast. 59. But George VI felt that by abdicating and renouncing the succession, Edward had lost the right to bear royal titles, including Royal Highness. 60. In settling the issue, George's first act as king was to confer upon Edward the title Duke of Windsor, with the style Royal Highness, but the letters patent creating the dukedom prevented any wife or children from bearing royal styles. George VI was forced to buy from Edward the royal residences of Balmoral Castle and Sandringham House, as these were private properties and did not pass to him automatically. 61. 3 days after his accession, on his 41st birthday, he invested his wife, the new queen consort, with the Order of the Garter. 62. Cover of the May 7, 1937 edition of Radio Times, drawn by C. R. W. Nevin Son, marking the first coronation to be broadcast and partially televised, live. George VI's coronation at Westminster Abbey took place on May 12, 1937, the date previously intended for Edward's coronation. In a break with tradition, Queen Mary attended the ceremony in a show of support for her son. 63. There was no Durbar held in Delhi for George VI, as had occurred for his father, as the cost would have been a burden to the government of India. 64. Rising Indian nationalism made the welcome that the royal party would have received likely to be muted at best. 65. And a prolonged absence from Britain would have been undesirable in the tense period before the Second World War. 2 overseas tours were undertaken, to France and to North America, both of which promised greater strategic advantages in the event of war. 66. The growing likelihood of war in Europe dominated the early reign of George VI. The king was constitutionally bound to support British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's appeasement of Hitler. 1467. When the king and queen greeted Chamberlain on his return from negotiating the Munich Agreement in 1938, they invited him to appear on the balcony of Buckingham Palace with them. This public association of the monarchy with a politician was exceptional, as balcony appearances were traditionally restricted to the royal family. 14. While broadly popular among the general public, Chamberlain's policy towards Hitler was the subject of some opposition in the House of Commons, which led historian and politician John Grigg to describe George's behavior in associating himself so prominently with a politician as the most unconstitutional act by a British sovereign in the present century. 68. Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt with King George VI and Queen Elizabeth on the USS Potomac, June 9, 1939. In May and June 1939, the King and Queen toured Canada and the United States. It was the first visit of a reigning British monarch to North America, although George had been to Canada prior to his accession. From Ottawa, George and Elizabeth were accompanied by Canadian Prime Minister Mackenzie King, 69, to present themselves in North America as King and Queen of Canada, 70, 71. Both Mackenzie King and the Canadian Governor-General, Lord Tweedsmuir, hoped that George's presence in Canada would demonstrate the principles of the Statute of Westminster 1931, which gave full sovereignty to the British dominions. On May 19, George personally accepted and approved the letter of credence of the new U.S. ambassador to Canada, Daniel Calhoun Roper, gave royal assent to 9 parliamentary bills, and ratified 2 international treaties with the Great Seal of Canada. The official royal tour historian, Gustav Langtot, wrote, "The Statute of Westminster had assumed full reality, and George gave a speech emphasizing the free and equal association of the nations of the Commonwealth." 72. The trip was intended to soften the strong isolationist tendencies among the North American public with regard to the developing tensions in Europe. Although the aim of the tour was mainly political, to shore up Atlantic support for the United Kingdom in any future war, the King and Queen were enthusiastically received by the public. 73. The fear that George would be compared unfavorably to his predecessor was dispelled. 74. They visited the 1939 New York World's Fair and stayed with President Franklin D. Roosevelt at the White House and at his private estate at Hyde Park, New York. 75. A strong bond of friendship was forged between Roosevelt and the royal couple during the tour, which had major significance in the relations between the United States and the United Kingdom through the ensuing war years. 76. 77. Second World War. King George VI, Queen Elizabeth, and Princess Elizabeth with RAF personnel during World War II. Following the German invasion of Poland in September 1939, the United Kingdom and the self-governing dominions other than Ireland declared war on Nazi Germany. 78. The King and Queen resolved to stay in London, despite German bombing raids. They officially stayed in Buckingham Palace throughout the war, although they usually spent nights at Windsor Castle. 79. The first night of the Blitz on London, on September 7, 1940, killed about 1,000 civilians, mostly in the East End. 80. On September 13, the couple narrowly avoided death when 2 German bombs exploded in a courtyard at Buckingham Palace while they were there. 81. In defiance, the Queen declared, "I am glad we have been bombed. It makes me feel we can look the East End in the face." 82. The royal family were portrayed as sharing the same dangers and deprivations as the rest of the country. They were subject to British rationing restrictions, and the U.S. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt remarked on the rationed food served and the limited bathwater that was permitted during a stay at the unheated and boarded-up palace. 83. In August 1942, the King's brother, the Duke of Kent, was killed on active service. 84. With Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, Wright, near the front lines in the Netherlands, October 1944. In 1940, Winston Churchill replaced Neville Chamberlain as Prime Minister, though personally George would have preferred to appoint Lord Halifax, 85, after the King's initial dismay over Churchill's appointment of Lord Beaverbrook to the cabinet. He and Churchill developed the closest personal relationship in modern British history between a monarch and a prime minister. 86. Every Tuesday for 4.5 years from September 1940, the two men met privately for lunch to discuss the war in secret and with frankness. 87. George related much of what the two discussed in his diary, which is the only extant first-hand account of these conversations. 88. Throughout the war, George and Elizabeth provided morale-boosting visits throughout the United Kingdom, visiting bomb sites, munitions factories, and troops. George visited military forces abroad in France in December 1939, North Africa and Malta in June 1943, Normandy in June 1944, southern Italy in July 1944, and the Low Countries in October 1944. 89. Their high public profile and apparently indefatigable determination secured their place as symbols of national resistance. 90. At a social function in 1944, the chief of the Imperial General Staff, Field Marshal Alan Brooke, revealed that every time he met Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, he thought Montgomery was after his job. George replied, "You should worry. When I meet him, I always think he's after mine." 91. In 1945, crowds shouted, "We want the King," in front of Buckingham Palace during the Victory in Europe Day celebrations. In an echo of Chamberlain's appearance, the King invited Churchill to appear with the royal family on the balcony to public acclaim. 92. In January 1946, George addressed the United Nations at its first assembly, which was held in London, and reaffirmed our faith in the equal rights of men and women and of nations great and small. 93. Empire to Commonwealth. With Clement Attlee left at Buckingham Palace, July 1945. George VI's reign saw the acceleration of the dissolution of the British Empire. The Statute of Westminster 1931 had already acknowledged the evolution of the dominions into separate sovereign states. The process of transformation from an empire to a voluntary association of independent states, known as the Commonwealth, gathered pace after the Second World War. 94. During the ministry of Clement Attlee, British India became the two independent dominions of India and Pakistan in August 1947. 95. George relinquished the title of Emperor of India, 96, and became King of India and King of Pakistan instead. In late April 1949, the Commonwealth leaders issued the London Declaration, which laid the foundation of the modern Commonwealth and recognized George as head of the Commonwealth. 97, 98, 99. In January 1950, he ceased to be King of India when it became a republic. He remained King of Pakistan until his death. Other countries left the Commonwealth, such as Burma in January 1948, Palestine, divided between Israel and the Arab states, in May 1948, and the Republic of Ireland in 1949. 100. In 1947, George and his family toured southern Africa. 101. The Prime Minister of the Union of South Africa, Jan Smuts, was facing an election and hoped to make political capital out of the visit. 102. George was appalled, however, when instructed by the South African government to shake hands only with whites. 103. And referred to his South African bodyguards as the Gestapo. 104. Despite the tour, Smuts lost the election the following year, and the new government instituted a strict policy of racial segregation. Illness and death. Main article: Death and State Funeral of George VI. The stress of the war had taken its toll on George's health. 105, 106, made worse by his heavy smoking. 107, and subsequent development of lung cancer among other ailments, including arteriosclerosis and Burger's disease. A planned tour of Australia and New Zealand was postponed after George developed an arterial blockage in his right leg, which threatened the loss of the leg, and was treated with a right lumbar sympathectomy in March 1949. 108. His elder daughter and heir presumptive, Elizabeth, took on more royal duties as her father's health deteriorated. The delayed tour was reorganized, with Princess Elizabeth and her husband, Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, taking the place of the King and Queen. George was well enough to open the Festival of Britain in May 1951, but on June 4 it was announced that he would need immediate and complete rest for the next 4 weeks. Despite the arrival of Haakon VII of Norway the following afternoon for an official visit, 109, on September 23, 1951, his left lung was removed in a surgical operation performed by Clement Price Thomas after a malignant tumor was found. 110. In October 1951, Elizabeth and Philip went on a month-long tour of Canada. The trip had been delayed for a week due to George's illness. At the state opening of Parliament in November, the Lord Chancellor, Lord Simons, read the King's speech from the throne. 111. The King's Christmas broadcast of 1951 was recorded in sections and then edited together. 112. On January 31, 1952, despite advice from those close to him, George went to London Airport, to see Elizabeth and Philip off on their tour to Australia via Kenya. It was his last public appearance. 6 days later, at 7:30 a.m. on the morning of February 6, he was found dead in bed at Sandringham House in Norfolk. 114. He had died in the night from a coronary thrombosis at the age of 56. 115. His daughter flew back to Britain from Kenya as Queen Elizabeth II. 116. From February 9, George's coffin rested in St. Mary Magdalene Church, Sandringham, before lying in state at Westminster Hall from 11 February. 117. His funeral took place at St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle. On 15 February, 118, he was interred initially in the Royal Vault until he was transferred to the King George VI Memorial Chapel inside St. George's on 26 March 1969. 119. In 2002, 50 years after his death, the remains of his widow, Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother, and the ashes of his younger daughter, Princess Margaret, who both died that year, were interred in the chapel alongside him. 120. In 2022, the remains of Queen Elizabeth II and her husband, Prince Philip, were also interred in the chapel. 121. Legacy. See also, Cultural depictions of George VI. Statue by William Macmillan, 1955, at Carlton House Terrace, Westminster. In the words of Labour Member of Parliament, MP George Hardie, the abdication crisis of 1936 did more for republicanism than 50 years of propaganda. 122. George VI wrote to his brother Edward that in the aftermath of the abdication, he had reluctantly assumed a rocking throne and tried to make it steady again. 123. He became king at a point when public faith in the monarchy was at a low ebb. During his reign, his people endured the hardships of war, and imperial power was eroded. However, as a dutiful family man and by showing personal courage, he succeeded in restoring the popularity of the monarchy. 124. 125. The George Cross and the George Medal were founded at the King's suggestion during the Second World War to recognize acts of exceptional civilian bravery. 126. He bestowed the George Cross on the entire island fortress of Malta. In 1943, 127, he was posthumously awarded the Order of Liberation by the French government in 1960, one of only 2 people, the other being Churchill in 1958, to be awarded the medal after 1946. 128. Colin Firth won an Academy Award for Best Actor for his performance as George VI in the 2010 film The King's Speech. William was born during the reign of his paternal grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. He was educated at Wetherby School, Ludgrow School, and Eton College. He earned a Master of Arts degree in Geography at the University of St. Andrews, where he met his future wife, Catherine Middleton. They have 3 children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. After university, William trained at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst prior to serving with the Blues and Royals. In 2008, he graduated from the Royal Air Force College Cranwell, joining the RAF Search and Rescue Force in early 2009. He served as a full-time pilot with the East Anglian Air Ambulance for 2 years from July 2015. William performs official duties and engagements on behalf of the monarch. He is patron of multiple charitable and military organizations, including the Tusk Trust, Centrepoint, The Passage, Wales Air Ambulance, and London's Air Ambulance Charity. Through the Royal Foundation, his work focuses on mental health, conservation, homelessness, and emergency workers. In 2020, William launched the Earthshot Prize, a £50 million initiative to incentivize environmental solutions. William was made Duke of Cambridge immediately before his wedding in April 2011. He became Duke of Cornwall and Duke of Rothesay upon his father's accession to the throne on September 8, 2022. The following day he was made Prince of Wales. Early life. William was born at 9:03 p.m. on June 21, 1982 at St. Mary's Hospital, London, during the reign of his paternal grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. He was the first child of Charles, Prince of Wales, later King Charles III, and his first wife, Diana, Princess of Wales. 345. He was the first direct heir to the British throne to be born in a hospital. 6. Buckingham Palace announced his name, William Arthur Philip Lewis, on 28 June. 3. William was christened in the music room at Buckingham Palace by the then Archbishop of Canterbury, Robert Runcie, on August 4, coinciding with the 82nd birthday of his paternal great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother, 7c. William was the first child born to a Prince and Princess of Wales since Prince John was born to Prince George and Princess Mary, later King George V and Queen Mary, in July 1905. 9. When he was 9 months old, William accompanied his parents on their 1983 tour of Australia and New Zealand as his first trip overseas. 10. It also marked the first time that a royal baby was taken on an overseas tour. 11. Family photographs of William and his parents on the grounds of Government House in Auckland, New Zealand, received significant global coverage. 12. And have been identified as a major reason why the Buzzy Bee, the toy which William was playing with, became a New Zealand cultural icon. 13. A young William, sitting with his parents on a mat, playing with a toy. With his parents in Auckland playing with a Buzzy Bee during the 1983 tour of New Zealand. His younger brother, Prince Harry, was born in September 1984. Both of them were raised at Kensington Palace in London and Highgrove House in Gloucestershire. Known informally as Wills within his family. 17. William was nicknamed Willie by his brother and Wombat by his mother. 18. 19. Diana wished her sons to obtain broader and more typical life experiences beyond royal upbringing, taking them to Walt Disney World, McDonald's, AIDS clinics and shelters for the homeless. 20. The biographer Robert Lacey asserts that William, described as a rambunctious and brawdy child, became more reflective with a noticeably quiet character as he began boarding school. 21. Diana was reported to have described William as my little wise old man on whom she started to rely as her confidant by his early teens. 22. See caption. Shaking hands with Barbara Bush, 1991. His mother, Diana, and brother, Harry, look on. William carried out his first public engagement while accompanying his parents on a visit to Llandaff on St. David's Day in 1991. 23. He and Harry traveled to Canada on an official visit with their parents in 1991, and again with Charles in 1998. 24. 25. William's parents divorced in 1996. Diana died in a car accident in the early hours of August 31, 1997. William, then aged 15, together with his 12-year-old brother and their father, was staying at Balmoral Castle at the time. The following morning, Charles informed William and Harry of their mother's death. 26. William was reportedly uncertain as to whether he should walk behind his mother's coffin during the funeral procession. His grandfather Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, told him, "If you don't walk, I think you'll regret it later." "If I walk, will you walk with me?" 27. At the funeral, William and Harry walked alongside their father, grandfather, and maternal uncle, Charles Spencer, 9th Earl Spencer, behind the funeral cortege from Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey. 28. After his mother's death, William stated that he was in a state of shock for many years. 29. He and Harry inherited the majority of the £12.9 million left by their mother on their respective 30th birthdays, a figure that had grown to £10 million each by 2014. 31. In 2014, the brothers inherited their mother's wedding dress, along with many other of her personal possessions, including dresses, diamond tiaras, jewels, letters, and paintings. They also received the original lyrics and score of Candle in the Wind by Bernie Taupin and Elton John, as performed by the latter at Diana's funeral. 31. In 2002, The Times reported that William and Harry would also share £4.9 million from trust funds established by their great-grandmother on their respective 21st birthdays, as well as £8 million upon their respective 40th birthdays. 32. Education. William was educated at private schools. He started at Jane Minner's Nursery School and the pre-preparatory Wetherby School, both in London, before continuing at Ludgrove School near Wokingham, Berkshire. 33. 34. At Ludgrove, William was active in sport before being admitted to Eton College, where he studied geography, biology, and history of art at A-level. He also took part in several sports. 35. 36. The decision to send William to Eton broke with royal tradition, as his father and grandfather had both attended Gordonstown. 37. The royal family and the press agreed William would be allowed to study free from media intrusion in exchange for periodic official updates. 38. In June 1991, William was admitted to the Royal Berkshire Hospital after being accidentally hit on the forehead by a fellow pupil wielding a golf club. He suffered a depressed fracture of the skull and was operated on at Great Ormond Street Hospital, resulting in a permanent scar. 39. The incident received widespread media attention. 40. After leaving Eton, William took a gap year. He joined British Army training exercises in Belize. 41. Worked on English dairy farms, and visited Africa. He also spent 10 weeks in southern Chile with Raleigh International, taking part in community projects and teaching English. 42. In 2001, William enrolled at the University of St Andrews in Scotland. 43-44. Similar to his time at Eton, the media agreed not to invade his privacy, and students were warned not to leak stories to the press. 45. William embarked on a degree course in art history, but later changed his main subject to geography. He focused his dissertation on the Indian Ocean's Rodriguez coral reefs and graduated with an undergraduate Master of Arts, M.A. Hons, degree with upper second-class honors in 2005. 46-47. While at university, he represented the Scottish National University's water polo team at the Celtic Nations Tournament in 2004. 48. He was reportedly known as Steve by other students to avoid any journalists realizing his identity. 49. Early appointments and duties. At the age of 21, William became a Councillor of State. 50. In July 2005, he undertook his first solo public engagements on an overseas tour of New Zealand, traveling to participate in World War II commemorations. 51. In 2009, the Queen set up a private office for William and Harry with David Manning as their advisor. 52. Manning accompanied William on his first official tour in January 2010, as the latter toured Auckland and Wellington. 53-54. The visit spurred crowds of many thousands with positive public reception compared to that of his mother's 1983 tour. 55. In March 2011, William visited Christchurch, New Zealand, shortly after the earthquake. 56. And spoke at the memorial service at Hagley Park on behalf of his grandmother. 57. He also traveled to Australia to visit areas affected by flooding in Queensland and Victoria. 58-59. Before attending Sandhurst, William did a 3-week internship at several institutions, including the Bank of England, the London Stock Exchange, and Lloyd's of London. 60. To prepare for his eventual management of the Duchy of Cornwall. In 2014, he entered St. John's College, Cambridge to undertake an executive agriculture management degree run by the Cambridge Programme for Sustainability Leadership, CPSO, of which his father is patron. 61-62. In April 2019, Kensington Palace announced that William had completed a 3-week internship at MI5, MI6 and GCHU 60, during which he was tasked with monitoring extreme Islamist terror cells, identifying potential threats abroad, and observing code-breaking technology. 63. Military and Air Ambulance Service. See caption. In Royal Air Force uniform at the 2010 Trooping the Colour. Having decided on a military career, William was admitted to the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst in January 2006. His admission was based on successfully completing a 44-week course as an officer cadet, which led to his commission as a British Army officer. 64-65. As Lieutenant Wales, a name based on his father's then title Prince of Wales. He followed his brother, 66, into the Blues and Royals in December that year as a second lieutenant, after which he spent 5 months training for the post at Bovington Camp in Dorset. 67-68. Despite the Queen's approval for William to serve on the front line, his position as second in line to the throne at the time cast doubts on his chances of seeing combat. 69. Plans by the Ministry of Defense to send William to southern Iraq leaked, and the government eventually decided against sending him as it would endanger both his life and the lives of people around him if he was targeted. 70. William instead trained in the Royal Navy and Royal Air Force, obtaining his commission as a sub-lieutenant in the former and a flying officer in the latter, both broadly equivalent to the Army rank of lieutenant. After completing his training, he undertook an attachment with the Royal Air Force at RAF Cranwell. 71-72. Upon completing the course, he was presented with his RAF wings by his father, 73, who had received his own wings after training at Cranwell. 74. During this secondment, William flew to Afghanistan in a C-17 Globemaster that repatriated the body of Trooper Robert Pearson. 75. William was then seconded to train with the Royal Navy. 76. He then completed an accelerated naval officer training course at the Britannia Royal Naval College. 76. Whilst serving on HMS Iron Duke in July 2008, William participated in a £40 million drug seizure in the Atlantic, northeast of Barbados. 77. He was part of the crew on the Lynx helicopter, which helped seize 900 kilograms of cocaine from a speedboat. 78. See caption. Piloting a Sea King helicopter in 2010. As part of his training across all branches of the military in 2008 and 2009, he spent up to 6 weeks with the Special Air Service, the Special Boat Service, and the Special Reconnaissance Regiment. 79-80. In January 2009, William transferred his commission to the RAF and was promoted to flight lieutenant. He trained to become a helicopter pilot with the RAF Search and Rescue Force. 81. In January 2010, he graduated from the Defense Helicopter Flying School at RAF Shawbury. 82. In the same month, he transferred to the Search and Rescue Training Unit at RAF Valley, Anglesey, to receive training on the Sea King Search and Rescue Helicopter. He graduated in September 2010. 83-84. This made him the first member of the British royal family since Henry VII to live in Wales. 85. William's first rescue mission as co-pilot of a RAF Sea King was in response to an emergency call from Liverpool Coast Guard in October 2010. 86. In November 2011, he participated in a search and rescue mission involving a cargo ship that was sinking in the Irish Sea. William, as a co-pilot, helped rescue 2 sailors. 87. He was deployed to the Falkland Islands for a 6-week tour with number 1564 flight from February to March 2012. 88-89. The Argentine government condemned William's deployment to the islands close to the 30th anniversary of the beginning of the Falklands War as a provocative act. 90-91. In June 2012, He gained a qualification to be captain or pilot in command of a Sea King rather than a co-pilot. 92. His active service as an RAF search and rescue pilot ended in September 2013. 93-94. He conducted 156 search and rescue operations, which resulted in 149 people being rescued. 95. He later became patron of the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. 96. In July 2015, William began working full-time as a pilot with the East Anglian Air Ambulance, EA, based at Cambridge Airport, which he felt was a natural progression from his previous search and rescue role. 97-98. He donated his full salary to the EA charity. 98. William required a civil pilot's license and further training before being permitted to begin his role. 98. He underwent part of his training at Norwich Airport. 99. William described working irregular shifts and dealing mostly with critical care cases. 100. He also discussed the impact of witnessing intensive trauma and bereavement on his mental health and personal life. 101. The BBC has written that William was exposed to the National Health Service in a way that no other senior royal has been or possibly ever will be. With Catherine at the Canada Day celebration in 2011 during their first tour outside the United Kingdom. William was created Duke of Cambridge, Earl of Strathern, and Baron Carrickfergus on the day of his wedding in April 2011. 145. 146. He and Catherine toured Canada that summer. 147. Nicholas Witchell, writing for BBC News, described the tour as an unqualified success, noting the couple's relaxed approach, from tree planting to street hockey, charmed the public and bolstered support for the monarchy. 148. The couple served as ambassadors for the 2012 Summer Olympics in London during multiple sporting events throughout the Games. 149. In September 2013, William and Catherine visited Singapore, Malaysia, Tuvalu, and the Solomon Islands as part of the Queen's Diamond Jubilee celebrations. 150. William hosted his first investiture ceremony at Buckingham Palace in October that year. 151. In April 2014, he and Catherine undertook a royal tour to New Zealand and Australia accompanied by their son George. 152. In August that year, the couple along with Prince Harry represented the royal family at World War I commemorations in Belgium. 153. In December, the couple visited New York and Washington, D.C., where William made a speech at the World Bank condemning the illegal trade in wildlife. In March 2020, William appeared in a video for the National Emergencies Trust, launching a fundraising appeal to support charities during the COVID-19 pandemic. 219. In April, he officially became patron of the organization. In December 2020, William and Catherine became joint patrons of NHS charities together. 220. In February 2021, he visited a vaccination center in Kings Lynn and later encouraged use of the vaccine, denouncing false information that could cause vaccine hesitancy. In September, he reportedly helped evacuate a Sandhurst-trained Afghan officer and his family from Kabul during the 2021 Taliban offensive. In March 2022, amid the Russian invasion of Ukraine, William and Catherine made a donation to help the refugees. In February 2023, they donated to the Disasters Emergency Committee, DEC, which was helping victims of the 2023 Turkey, Syria earthquake. 226. In July 2023, William became patron of the appeal to launch the Fleming Center, driving a new global movement to tackle antimicrobial resistance. 227. In July 2024, he and Catherine made donations to help victims of Hurricane Beryl. In January 2025, William was announced as patron of the College of Paramedics. Conservation. Seek action. At a United for Wildlife Task Force meeting at Buckingham Palace, 2017. William became patron of the Tusk Trust in December 2005, a charity that works towards conserving wildlife and initiating community development across Africa. He carried out his first official duty with the trust in launching a 5,000-mile, 8,000 kilometers, bike ride across the African continent in April 2008. Later, William helped with launching the Tusk Conservation Awards, which have been presented to selected environmental activists annually since 2013. In June 2010, he and his brother visited Botswana, Lesotho, and South Africa, undertaking projects relating to wildlife, sport, and young children. 234. In 2013, he succeeded his grandfather, the Duke of Edinburgh, as president of Fields in Trust and transitioned into the role of patron in 2024. 235. 236. He established the United for Wildlife Transport Task Force in December 2014, with the goal of reducing global illegal wildlife trade. 237. In 2014, Jane Goodall stated that William had expressed the view that all ivory in the royal collection needed to be destroyed. 238. William has occasionally commented on the effects of overpopulation on the wildlife of Africa, but his remarks have been criticized in the media for not taking resource consumption and population density into consideration. After 2 years of research, William launched the Earthshot Prize in October 2020, designed to provide funding and incentive for environmental solutions over the next decade. 240. Following the launch, he gave a TED Talk on environmental protection and conservation as part of the TED Countdown Climate Change Initiative. 241. Later that month, William took over the patronages of Fauna and Flora International and the British Trust for Ornithology, passed on from his grandparents. 242. In the same month, he appeared in an ITV documentary titled Prince William, A Planet for Us All, to discuss environmental issues. 243. In 2021, William made a private donation to the Thin Green Line Foundation, which provides grants for the relatives of conservation park rangers that are killed every year while protecting wildlife. 244. In July 2022, he condemned the murder of South African park ranger Anton Zimba and asked for the responsible parties to be brought to justice. 245. William has called for stricter penalties for poachers and wildlife traffickers, having spoken at the Illegal Wildlife Trade Conference in 2018, and supported a court sentencing in the United States to a man responsible for trafficking rhinoceros horns and elephant ivory in 2022. LGBT rights. William has spoken out for LGBT rights as part of his work against cyberbullying, stating the importance of being proud of the person you are and discussing the effects of online abuse and discrimination. 248. In 2016, he appeared in the July issue of Attitude and became the first member of the royal family to be featured on the cover of a gay magazine. 249. He was recognized at the British LGBT Awards in May 2017. 248. William hosted a commemorative Pride Month discussion with mental health charity volunteers at the Royal Vauxhall Tavern in June 2023. Mental health. Since 2009, William has been patron of Child Bereavement UK, which provides support to children and families who have lost a loved one. 251. In 2016, the Royal Foundation launched multiple mental health initiatives, including Heads Together, a campaign led by William, Catherine, and Harry to destigmatize mental health. 252. Legacy programs include Mental Health at Work, launched in September 2018 to change the approach to workplace mental health in the United Kingdom, as well as Heads Up, launched in May 2019 in partnership with the Football Association, utilizing football to affect the conversation surrounding mental health in adults. 253. Later that month, William and Catherine, together with William's brother Harry and sister-in-law Meghan, launched Shout, the United Kingdom's first 24/7 text messaging service for those who suffer from mental issues. 254. William later volunteered on the crisis helpline during the COVID-19 lockdowns to provide support by a text message. 255. He attributes his interest in mental health to his experiences as an air ambulance pilot, his work with the homeless, veterans' welfare, and his wife's anti-addiction advocacy. 29. In March 2020, William and Catherine began supporting a new mental health initiative by the Public Health England Agency amidst the coronavirus pandemic. 256. In April 2020, the couple announced Our Frontline, an initiative providing mental health support to emergency medical workers. 257. In September 2020, William established the Emergency Responders Senior Leaders Board, commissioned by the Foundation to research the mental health and well-being of emergency responders, in partnership with King's College London and the Open University. 258. In May 2021 and 2022, William and Catherine voiced the Mental Health Minute message, which was broadcast on every radio station in the United Kingdom and asked people to help individuals around them that suffer from loneliness. 259. 260. In October 2022, to mark the World Mental Health Day, the couple took over Newsbeat and interviewed 4 guests on topics related to mental health. 261. In September 2023, William unveiled 2 organizations that had partnered with the Duchy of Cornwall to raise better mental well-being and provide mental health services for all its tenants. 262. 263. In October 2023, and to mark World Mental Health Day, he and Catherine took part in a forum for young people in Birmingham, alongside BBC Radio 1 and charity called The Mix, called Exploring Our Emotional Worlds, continuing their long-standing work to promote mental well-being. 264. In May 2024, he announced a 3-year funding package for the charity We're Farming Minds to provide mental health support for farmers on the Duchy of Cornwall lands. 265. In December 2024, he and Catherine announced that they were jointly funding a pilot scheme with the charity Norfolk and Waveney Mind to offer extra support for rural and farming communities on the Sandringham estate. 266. In March 2025, William was announced as patron of We Are Farming Minds. 267. 268. Homelessness. In September 2005, William became patron of Centrepoint, a charity that assists the homeless. 269. In December 2009, as part of a Centrepoint organized event, the prince spent the night in a sleeping bag near Blackfriars Bridge to raise awareness of the experiences of homeless youth. 270. He opened their new facility, Apprenticeship House, in November 2019 to mark their 50th anniversary. 271. William has been patron of homelessness charity The Passage since 2019 after first visiting the center in 1993 with his mother. 272. 273. In October 2020, he wrote the introduction to the organization's 40th anniversary fundraising cookbook, discussing the importance of helping victims of homelessness during the COVID-19 pandemic. 274. In December, William volunteered at the charity to help prepare donation bags for homeless residents in emergency hotel accommodations and spoke with residents about their experiences. 275. In 2022 and 2023, he was spotted selling copies of The Big Issue, usually sold by homeless and unemployed people to earn money. 276. 277. In June 2023, William launched Homewards after 2 years of development, with aims to end homelessness in the United Kingdom. 278. 279. The 5-year initiative aims to tackle homelessness in 6 pilot locations across the United Kingdom, with an initial seed funding allocated for each area by the Royal Foundation, working with existing private sector and grassroots charity partners. 278. The project focuses on early intervention and providing housing to families before other issues, such as abuse and joblessness, are addressed. 279. In February 2024, William, in partnership with Cornish charity Street Petrocks, announced plans for building 24 homes on Duchy of Cornwall land in Nanseldon to provide temporary accommodation for people experiencing homelessness in the area. 280. Future plans include building more than 400 social rented homes and a further 475 affordable dwellings in southeast Faversham. 281. Sport. See caption. Playing polo at Sandhurst in 2007. William often plays polo to raise money for charity. 282. He is a fan of football and supports the English club Aston Villa. 283. he became president of England's Football Association (FA) in May 2006 and viceroyal patron of the Welsh Rugby Union (WRU) in February 2007, supporting the Queen as patron. 284. The same year, the WRU's decision to name the Prince William Cup drew criticism, as some believed it would have been more appropriate to name it after Ray Gravel. 285. 286. William became patron of the WRU and the FA in 2016 and 2024, respectively. 287. 236. In December 2010, William, alongside David Cameron, attended a meeting with FIFA Vice President Chung Mong-jun, at which Chung suggested a vote-trading deal for the right to host the 2018 World Cup in England. The English delegation reported the suggestion to FIFA, considering it a violation of anti-collusion rules. 288. 289. In 2011, William, as president of the English FA, voted against Australia's 2022 FIFA bid and instead voted for South Korea, despite being Australia's future heir. In 2020, he voted against the joint Australia-New Zealand 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup bid and instead voted for Colombia. 290. In February 2021, following an investigation into racism directed at Marcus Rashford, William released a statement as president of the FA, denouncing the racist abuse, whether on the pitch, in the stands, or on social media, as despicable, and stating that we all have a responsibility to create an environment of tolerance and accountability. 291. In April, William criticized the planned breakaway competition, the Super League, adding that he shared the concerns of fans about the proposed Super League and the damage it risks causing to the game we love. 292. In July, he condemned racist attacks against England football players following their loss at the UEFA Euro 2020 finale. 293. In May 2007, William became patron of the English Schools Swimming Association. 294. In 2012, alongside his wife Catherine and brother Harry, William launched Coach Corps. The program was set up following the 2012 Olympics and provides apprenticeship opportunities for people who desire to pursue a career as a professional coach. 295. In May 2020, he appeared in a BBC One documentary titled Football, Prince William and Our Mental Health, as a part of a campaign to promote men to discuss their mental issues using football as a common medium. 296. Both William and Harry are enthusiastic motorcyclists. William owns a Ducati 1198 S-Corse. 297. In May 2014, William, like his father and grandfather, became president of the British Sabaqua Club, BSC. 298. He also took part in a bandy event in Stockholm in January 2018. 299. In November 2022, William was criticised by Welsh football followers and Welsh actor Michael Sheen for holding the Prince of Wales title whilst having affiliations with the England national football team, particularly after he presented jerseys to the squad in advance of the 2022 FIFA World Cup, in which both Wales and England were placed in the same Group B. 300. William commented that he had supported the England football team from a very young age, but happily supported Welsh Rugby Union, of which he is patron, over England. 301. In August 2023, he was criticized in segments of the press and social media for not attending 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup final in Australia as president of the FA. 302. 303. Public image. See caption. William in 2009. William has been one of the most popular members of the British royal family since his birth. 304. 305. 306. Having lived a public life since birth, he was regarded as a heartthrob and eligible as a young adult, similar to his father. 307. 308. 309. Ruth Lafurla of the New York Times contrasted William's refined and polite appeal to Leonardo DiCaprio's bad boy popularity. 310. Following his marriage, William's public image assumed a more staid and fatherly demeanor, having settled into a stable domestic order. 311. 312. And McElvoy has described William's public personality as a genial presence with a tougher side, alongside his mother's inimitable style. 313. Much of his royal duties focus on big bet projects rather than plaques and patronages. In a 2016 interview, William said his aim was to keep the royal family relevant over the next 20 years. 314. 311. William and Catherine's close partnership has been described by The Times as a good double act, with both valuing normality, privacy, and control. 315. In 2011, Time magazine listed him as one of the most influential people in the world alongside his then newlywed wife Catherine. 316. In August 2023, Gallup Incorporated named him as the most popular public figure in the U.S. after conducting a survey that asked for people's views on 15 prominent individuals. 317. He was found to be the most popular member of the royal family by YouGov in December 2022, 318, and September 2023, 319, and as the second most popular in April 2024, 320. In December 2024, the Daily Telegraph included William in its annual list of best-dressed celebrities, 321. In 2025, he was listed alongside Catherine on the inaugural Time 100 philanthropy list, wink with a frown. 322. That year the couple also topped Tatler's Social Power Index. 323. Privacy and the media. The death of Diana, Princess of Wales, while being chased by the paparazzi in 1997, has shaped William and Catherine's guarded stance towards the media. 324. 325. They have repeatedly asked for privacy when off-duty. 325. In 2005, William spoke with the ITV reporter Tom Bradby and concluded that it was likely that their voicemails were being accessed. 326. An investigation under then Deputy Assistant Commissioner Peter Clark concluded that the compromised voicemail accounts belonged to William's aides, including Jamie Lowther Pinkerton. 327, and not the prince himself. 328. However, Clive Goodman later stated that he had hacked William's phone on 35 occasions. 329. Andy Coulson, the editor of News of the World, from 2003 to 2007, apologized to William and his brother for invading their privacy, accepting ultimate responsibility for Goodman's actions. 330. William later sued News Group newspapers, publisher of News of the World and The Sun, which resulted in an out-of-court settlement in 2020. 331. He and Harry brought a private claim through mutual solicitors, but Harry later pursued it separately with a new one. 331. 332. At the time of Middleton's 25th birthday in January 2007, William issued a statement expressing that the level of media intrusion had become intolerable. 333. In October that year, he condemned the aggressive pursuit by photographers as the couple left a London nightclub. The Press Complaints Commission warned editors against publishing images obtained through harassment. The Daily Mail, Daily Mirror, and Daily Express complied, while The Sun ran shots taken before their car departed. 334. In April 2009, William's lawyers secured an apology from the Daily Star over a false claim he had wrecked a $2 million training aircraft. 335. In September 2012, the French edition of Closer and Italian magazine Chi published topless photos of Catherine sunbathing at Château d'Autet. 336. William and Catherine filed a criminal complaint and civil suit in Nanterre. 337. A court granted an injunction banning further publication and launched a criminal inquiry. 338. In 2017, Closer was fined €100,000, and its editor and owner €45,000 each. 339. In October 2014, Catherine and William issued a legal warning to a freelance photographer for harassing and following their son George and his nanny. 340. In August 2015, Kensington Palace released a letter describing the media's dangerous efforts to photograph George and Charlotte, 341. In November 2016, William issued a statement supporting Harry and his girlfriend, Meghan Markle, following their complaints about the press intrusion, 342. During a visit to the BBC studios in central London in November 2018, William criticized social media companies for failing to address misinformation and their role in fueling social problems, 343. In June 2022, a 3-minute video of William confronting Terry Harris, a paparazzi photographer, was posted on Harris's YouTube channel, 344. It was recorded in January 2021 and shows William arguing with Harris as the latter attempts to film William's family on a bike ride near Anmer Hall, 345. Kensington Palace called the video a privacy breach and requested its removal from public sites. In October 2025, Prince Harry named William and Catherine in his court case against Associated Newspapers, alleging that private investigators had been employed to collect information about them, including a payment for details of William's 21st birthday party in 2003, 346. Later that month, he and Catherine won a privacy case in France against Paris Match over unauthorized photos from a family ski trip in the Alps. Titles, styles, and honors. Further information, list of titles and honors of William, Prince of Wales. Titles and styles. William has been a British prince since birth and was known as Prince William of Wales until April 2011. He was created Duke of Cambridge, Earl of Strafford and Baron Carrickfergus by Elizabeth II on the day of his wedding. The letters patent granting these titles were issued on May 26 that year. As the eldest son of the monarch, William automatically became Duke of Cornwall, Duke of Rothesay, Earl of Carrick, Baron of Renfrew, Lord of the Isles, and Prince and Great Steward of Scotland on the accession of his father on 8 September 2022, 350, 351. From 8 to September 9, William was styled as His Royal Highness the Duke of Cornwall and Cambridge. 352. On September 9, Charles announced the creation of William as Prince of Wales, the traditional title for the male heir apparent to the British monarch. William has since been known as His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, except in Scotland, where he is called His Royal Highness the Duke of Rothesay instead. The letters patent formally granting him this title, and that of Earl of Chester, were issued on February 13, 2023. Honors. William is a Royal Knight Companion of the Most Noble Order of the Garter, KG, 356, an Extra Knight of the Most Ancient and Most Noble Order of the Thistle, KT, Great Master of the Most Honourable Order of the Bath, GCB, 358, a member of the Privy Council of the United Kingdom, PC, and a personal aide de camp, ADC, to the sovereign. Ancestry. Patrilineally, William is a member of the House of Windsor and also descends from the House of Oldenburg, one of Europe's oldest royal houses. More specifically, he descends from the cadet branch known as the House of Glucksburg. Through his mother, William descends from the Earls Spencer. A cadet branch of the Spencer family descended from the Earls of Sunderland. The senior branch are now also Dukes of Marlborough, the Barons Fermoy, and more anciently from Henry Fitzroy, 1st Duke of Grafton, and Charles Lennox, 1st Duke of Richmond, two illegitimate sons of King Charles II. As king, William would be the first monarch since the death of and in 1714 to undisputedly descend from Charles I and the first to descend from Charles II. William descends matrilineally from Eliza Kawark, a housekeeper for his 18th-century ancestor Theodore Forbes, a Scottish merchant who worked for the East India Company in Surat. She is variously described in contemporary documents as a dark-skinned native woman, an Armenian woman from Bombay, and Mrs. Forbesian. 363. Genealogist William Adams Reitweisner assumed Kawark was Armenian. 364. In June 2013, it was reported that genealogical DNA tests on two of William's distant matrilineal cousins confirm Kawark was matrilineally of Indian descent.